Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our new format, Last Planner System Bootcamp. I think some of you know me. My name's Amanda Warren. I'm super thrilled here to be with Paul Morgan today, our guest for today. Before we dive into our session, though, I'd just like to introduce Sue Glamuzina, who's one of my colleagues who's been with us for many, many years and is a fantastic support and resource for there she is, for the Last Planner System. She's got lots of knowledge. Tim Warren would be with us, but he's hosting the Construction Clients Group in Wellington right now, actually. Started 7 o'clock. So talking about Paul, so he's got a really extensive track record in major project delivery, and it spans over 30 years of commercial construction and civil, which is really unusual in my experience. We go back many, many years, and a couple of things that really strike me about Paul that's unusual and interesting for us to talk to him about is that jump across from civil to building projects. And I'm going to be asking him some questions today about what are the key differences between those two types of projects and what can we learn from one to the other. The second thing about Paul is he's always demonstrated, in my experience, a really high level of emotional intelligence, and his teams all have a lot of respect for him. So I'm really keen to hear Paul's thoughts on how important that is around the Last Planner System and how we can emulate that today. So what we're going to be doing today is diving into an interview with Paul, talking about those key things, looking at the strengths and weaknesses of deploying the Last Planner across those different projects. And you're welcome to add questions into the questions and answer section. If you can't see that, you can put them in the chat, and we'll have time at the end for that. If we've got a little bit of time and anyone is particularly interested, I can talk about the continuous improvement tool plus Delta at the end as well. And that's the tool we've used to continuously improve this bootcamp. So we've listened to what you've told us and made changes. So well, look, without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Paul. Thank you very much, Paul. And the first question is, tell us a bit about your journey into construction, and in particular, your introduction to the Last Planner System. How did it all start for you?
Well, firstly, thank you for inviting me. So as the journey for me into construction began back in the early 1990s, I worked for a local family business. They were employing around 150 employees at the time, and we covered a lot of residential and commercial builds. The business continued to grow, and we took on more complex, interesting projects, which in turn allowed growth within the business. So during my time there, we worked upon medical centres, wastewater treatment plants, some luxury housing, apartments and flats, supermarkets, retail parks, courts and prisons. So I basically remained with the same business for a number of years, and then came to New Zealand in 2005 for a holiday. So a friend of mine who was working in New Zealand at the time, and we had worked together back in the UK, was living here. So came over and stayed with him. So we had Christmas and New Year in 2005 and into 2006. I went back to the UK in the February and basically had a job offer. So I think we were still in the honeymoon period, you know, having loved our time in New Zealand, and we relocated permanently in the March of 2006. So yeah, haven't been back to the UK since. Coming to New Zealand then, I worked on many civil projects. So the Newmarket Viaduct, I think back then we were only dealing with around 90,000 vehicles a day that would pass through the worksite. It's probably quadrupled. We worked on the Southern Corridor, the Causeway Alliance, St. Luke's Interchange, and transmission gully from a civil aspect. And then commercial projects, I've been involved in the Metro Sports Facility, the Waikiria Prison, more recently some MOE projects, courthouses, data centres, and we're working on a forensic mental health facility currently. So I suppose the journey with Last Planner then would have begun well over 12 years ago, I suppose, when maybe you and I met, Amanda, and we were doing some workshops together. So we were kicking off the Causeway, the same alliance team we were together on the Newmarket Viaduct. So we basically moved to this new project. So a lot of us had worked together for a number of years, and we were looking for something different. We went through a lot of lessons learned, and the Last Planner was something we chose to implement. So I think, over 12 years ago, at the Causeway, and a lot of post-it notes later, and we're sort of bordering on the digital side of Last Planner. So yeah, the journey's been quite varied. I've used it at Transmission Gully. We've used it on the prison. So yeah, from large scale commercial projects and larger scale, civil and commercial. So yeah, hopefully that answered that one.
Thanks, Paul. So look, I'm just diving back into that project, that first project, working with you. I remember you really taking to Last Planner, and can you put yourself back there and just see if you can reach in and remember what were the key aspects that really turned you on at that point to, oh, this is something new, but this is something that really actually could help this project?
I think it was, I suppose, the collaboration, because a lot of the other projects to that point, you were responsible for the delivery, ensuring that things were, we were achieving milestones on time. But it sometimes seems a bit like there's a lot of weight on your shoulders. So with the Last Planner system, I think we were able to share that load somewhat, we'll build that trust, building the collaborative sort of environment that, and that's something that I enjoyed then, so we would get the designers in the room, we had the client in the room, the various trade partners in the room, and I think that sort of really digging into the detail, understanding, those roadblocks, the constraints, the things that were really going to stop us. Some of it you hadn't even thought of, that were, some of those that were being brought to the table, which would have been showstoppers. So I think that it was quite enlightening. Yeah.
Thanks, Paul. And what would you say, having worked across the civil sector and the building sector, what are the key differences that in the use of the Last Planner system, and is there anything from one to the other that you've brought across? Because I know you've gone from civil to building. So is there anything in particular you've brought across there?
So I suppose the big difference between the building projects and the civil projects would lie in the nature of the work, the variability. So the building projects, commercial, residential, more controlled environments, repetitive tasks, clearer sequences, the trade coordination being critical, multiple contractors, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, all working in close quarters. So coordination there is a major focus. The constraints are often, I suppose, internal delays, more likely due to design changes, material deliveries, or trade readiness. From a civil aspect, higher exposure, to the external variables there with weather changes, the site conditions, public interface. So the work being more linear, spread out, tasks are often geographically distributed, so making communication and coordination across distance more challenging. Constraints around permits, environmental conditions, stakeholder approvals, I suppose the key point of difference then would be the environmental variability. Building projects focusing more on trade coordination and the internal workflow reliability.
Yeah, and I think from what I've seen, Paul, in the civil sector, the production meetings tend to be, and the last planner users tend to be more the engineers of the main contractor, whereas in the building sector, you do invite the trades. Do you have a preference on either of those different styles? And I know that it's horses for courses, but I'm just interested in your thoughts on that. Who attends the production meetings and why it's important?
I think to get that collaboration and that buy-in, if you're not invited to the meeting and your input is not sort of valued, I suppose, you're less likely to get that ownership, aren't you? So I would suggest we've got the site team plus then those, the subcontractors, builders, all in the room together. Even from a civil aspect, when we used to do our production meetings, the team would get together and we would review. Tend not to have then the trades in that particular meeting. It can work either way, but especially in the planning sessions that need to happen, the weekly planning sessions, definitely everybody in the room, I would suggest, but maybe, focus on the key areas. If you've got your package managers, that they bring that team in, and then when you do your production meetings, see how that plan all comes together and where those conflicts could be. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that, Paul. What's the biggest success you've had with the last planner system, and what would you put that down to?
Biggest success. I suppose when we've used it, we've had success. It's if we was to look at a data center that we delivered maybe 18 months ago, the last planner system was used there in depth by the commissioning teams. So the services trades and the independent commissioning agent, our commissioning agent, using that last planner to basically ensure that everything ran like clockwork. I suppose that was seeing it probably at its best, so it was a real collaborative approach, and we achieved the deadlines that were in front of us. It was quite a stretch, but certainly brought it home. So yeah, I think the data center is probably a good example.
So you've talked about that collaboration, Paul, and I think what's coming through is how important it is to have the client and the designers. What happens when you don't get the client and the designers on board, and do you have any tips for people of how to engage them?
I suppose if they're not involved, with the constraints are not getting cleared, if we're waiting on design issues, I think you'll find that they don't fully understand their impact. So the lack of information, what that actually does to the last planners, those end users. So by bringing them in on that journey, they can actually see where on the program that information is required, what it would impact if we didn't receive it. Same as the RFIs, we still hold regular client meetings out on one of the jobs every Friday, and we go through the RFIs, we go through the planner, through the milestones, and they're on that journey, so what can they do to clear those log jams, those roadblocks, those constraints? So you've got the client there, and this is a build only project, so the client is, the consultants are basically paid by the client there, so he's interested in ensuring that the build is not slowed or interrupted. So he's got a vested interest. So Yeah, I think in that sort of instance, having the designers, having the client in the room, it's it everybody's aware then, of what part they play.
Yeah. I think it's probably as more critical sometimes in the building sector, but to have the consultants involved, isn't it? Because of the complexities and quite often the fast track nature of the project. Quite often we find in the civil projects that the design is a bit more nailed down. Not always, but what one of the major challenges we have is getting those consultants in the room. Can you talk a little bit about consultants and your experience with consultants and last planner, what they think about it, what the advantages have been when they come on board, and how you've got them on board if you really have needed to coerce them? What tips can you give us?
I suppose the one of the best examples of it would have been at the Causeway, and that was an alliance. So it was a pain and gain sort of, environment where, if we were late, everybody owned a bit of it. We all had skin in the game. But just being able to get timely responses to a lot of the queries, like if they're not involved in the meetings and basically talking with the teams that are about to deliver, sometimes it's like kicking the can down the road. It can take so long to get certain information through, but it's affecting the production. So I think, taking them on that journey, showing them how important that element is to us is the important part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think and that's what's coming across, isn't it? And can you think about any misunderstandings that people have had around the last planner system, Paul? What would you need to clear up most often when people come to the party and they're maybe a little bit skeptical? What are their concerns?
Yeah, so I suppose it's not treating it as just another scheduling tool. So making sure that collaborative planning, commitment to the system. So, it's going to help the workflow. It'll improve the workflow, the reliability, the team accountability, not just then the timelines. We can underestimate, I suppose, the importance of the collaboration. So assuming that planners or managers, create the plan alone, when in reality, the last planner relies on input from those doing the work. So the actual last planners to create the realistic and reliable plans. The other big one would be the skipping or the rushing, the weekly work planning. So we've got to make sure that weekly work plan, is critical and for identifying those constraints and making reliable commitments. Ignoring constraints is another sort of issue. Assuming that tasks can proceed just because they're on schedule. I mean, we talk about this regularly. Just because the program says it's meant to be happening doesn't necessarily mean that it can happen. There'd be something there that could prevent that from, taking place as planned. So the last planners, they emphasize there on removing the constraints before the work then is committed into that can-do week. So that'll be key to improving the plan reliability.
How do you, one of the things I'm curious, Paul, is how do you link the master program with what's coming out of the weekly production meetings? It's kind of one of the holy grails, isn't it?
I mean, we do the milestones. We've got milestones out of the program.
Yep.
So making sure that the master scheduling's done, aligning with the long-term, goals, project milestones. And then we'll drop into, breaking it down into those manageable chunks. So we start with the pull planning, the milestones, allow that milestone to pull that workflow. So we do a number of those pull planning sessions, and we just keep doing those. And then the weekly planning, identifying those constraints, and preparing some work in advance. I suppose the daily check-ins is another important aspect of it all. So making sure, have we done what we said we were going to do? So yesterday, did we achieve everything we set out to achieve? If not, why not? And what are we going to do today to pull that back around? And then checking, making sure that, that
and
the
I think one of the elements of the last planner system that is often not used as well, and I think it sounds like your guys are using it pretty well, is that whole continuous improvement. So when tasks aren't achieved, could you talk us a little bit through the process that you guys are using right now?
So we've got our key milestones. They are set there in the last planner. So we're currently, everything's, because of the size of the job, the multiple zones, different phases of work, a lot of contractors. We got about 350 trades on site on a daily basis. So the team are using like an Excel spreadsheet that allows them to have multiple work fronts rather than trying to use the boards. So we do the pull planning sessions. We do weekly breakout sessions to dig into that detail. We then, as a team, they'll do their sessions with the subcontractors. So doing their weekly planning. We do our weekly production meetings then, which is the reporting session. Go through checking those PPC scores, the reasons for zeros, and then keeping a track of that, ensuring then that we're learning from that. The team then meet every morning with the trades. They've got their last planner sheets, and they'll do a walk on the job into those various areas, checking that the works have been completed as noted, or they're on track for completion. So yeah, it's basically just checking it at every stage.
That's quite key, isn't it? You mentioned daily check-ins, and I think that's something else that people don't realise the importance of not waiting a whole week before you get your score, and then you're finding out that a lot of tasks haven't been completed, and you've got to retrospectively then figure out how to improve them. So I think that that tip for everyone here is having that daily walk around with the production sheet, and you're using spreadsheets for that, aren't you, Paul? By the sounds of it, is a great tip. What would be some other tips for either the civil sector or the building sector, or maybe both, that you would say, oh, these are, and sometimes it's hard because you do them without realizing what an amazing thing it is. But what would be the best bits of the last planner system that you guys say, oh, that's saved my bacon, or it's really helped, or what would be those tips for people to take away in, as I say, the building or civil?
Yeah, I suppose it's not a one size fits all either, is it? It's so I think it's adapting the system to suit the project type, the team that we've got there, the maturity of the team, and then maybe the complexity. I think the fundamentals remain the same. So, trying to get the team established early, get the last planner going early. There may only be minimal trades on site when you're first kicking off, but you find if you get everybody on the journey early, they'll help to bring others along. It's not always then down to the last planner, or the team, because the trades will assist in helping with that.
Who's been your biggest fan, do you think, and trade wise, and is there a particular company that stands out that have really taken on the last planner system? No one standing out for you?
Oh,
Yeah.
I say the wife is probably the biggest fan, just in case she's listening in, isn't it? But it's thank the wife. No,
Yeah.
I think it's, you know, on one of the projects at the moment, I was talking to the supervisor from Hanlon Plumbing,
Yeah.
and I mean they used the system at the Waikiria prison. They're using it with us now, and they've really bought into it, so they see value in it. And again, it's not stifling that, isn't it? We want to sort of, encourage that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think I
What?
think Hanlon's probably stands out for me at the moment. Yeah,
Yeah, I think that those services trades, they
yeah.
tend to gravitate to it quite well. What do you think out of it that they're seeing the value for their own company? What can people here sell as a message to their trades?
I suppose turning up and being able to fulfill the role that they were
Yeah,
employed to do. They're making money for the business.
yeah,
Downtime's massive, isn't it? If they're waiting, if they're unable to get in and do the job, they've then got to prove they're delayed,
hmm
to be able to, maybe get recompense for that. But it's so much easier if we can just allow people to turn up, do the job. I mean, it sounds brilliant, doesn't it? But yeah, it's I think, getting them involved with it. I think making it also their job to identify those constraints, the things that are
yeah,
really going to stop them. So it's not our job to find their constraints, let them bring them to the table.
yeah,
And our spreadsheet at the moment is like a single source of truth. So, if
yeah.
the constraint is not on there, we can't do anything about it. We don't know about it, So we're encouraging people to continually update that document.
Yeah. Do the trades get access to your spreadsheet, Paul, or is that how they do? So it's like
Yeah,
on a
yeah.
shared drive that they
I,
can add to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the teams have got it set up on Microsoft Teams, so they just invite them in and they can update
yeah,
the sheets. And I
great.
think there's maturity in it as well. They don't go in and swap everything around, or it's you can actually track the changes and
Yeah.
um, yeah, so it's working. I mean,
Good. What
it's
one of the
it can
other
be quite admin heavy, can't it? So having the trades assisting with that can also help.
Great. That's a great tip. Yeah, don't try and run all the admin yourself of capturing all the get their ownership in their tasks. Yeah,
Mm.
thanks, Paul. And one of the things that we find often that people find tricky is the scoring. And you mentioned PPCs. It's one of the first things that gets dropped sometimes when people feel the leaders, the Last Planet champions, haven't necessarily got that emotional intelligence to hold the space around the feeling of potential blame around scoring. Could you talk to me a little bit, Paul, about and maybe bring in that concept of emotional intelligence? How do you um, engender your leaders to help with that scoring so that everyone's feeling comfortable about declaring their score and then nutting out how do we fix it and how do we prevent it in future? What's
Mm.
your key tip for helping your direct supports to become competent at that?
I suppose I mean, the last planner system, the environment. I mean, trying to encourage us. It's not a blame sort of, the constraints. Things will get missed for a variety of reasons. If a trade's turned up on site, but they haven't been given the labour that they needed to get the job. I mean, we would identify it early. So during the week, during the daily walkovers, during those check-ins, it's not just wait, till we get to say the production meeting that we're understanding that somebody's missed everything because they didn't have enough people on site. We can get involved with that early. So if we identify it, the team will bring it to our attention, and then we can elevate and talk to the the bosses of some of the contractors that we've got on site. So we're there to assist. So that's a roadblock for, and for say that subcontractor, but we're there to help. So I suppose with these constraints, it's like, what do you need from us to allow you to come onto the site and do what you're being paid to do? So it's about clearing those roadblocks, making sure that machine can keep moving. So I think the no blame side of things, so that it doesn't turn into a big slanging match in the meetings. We'll go through, we'll record it, whether it be a lack of resource, material issues, things have been held up on a boat. I mean, we've gone through it all of late, with last planner and COVID and lockdowns, and still managing to keep things going. So I think, making sure that we develop that trust, and the team are happy enough to actually, if they've missed a target, they're not trying to conceal anything. We want to know, because then we can learn from it. We might be able to do something about it.
Yeah. Thanks, Paul. It's that really bringing a sense of safety, isn't it, into the meeting, so that people don't feel like they're going to be embarrassed or blamed. And I noticed on LinkedIn you'd forwarded a post, and I'm just going to read it out. So, leaders with high emotional intelligence can understand and manage their own emotions whilst also recognizing and influencing the emotions of others. Understanding one's emotions and their impact on decision making and interactions. Managing emotions, especially in high pressure situations, to remain calm and focused. And I think that's a lovely description. You didn't write that, and I know you forwarded it, but it's a lovely description of watching you in action, Paul. I know when we've worked with your team, you walk into the room, and I don't want to embarrass you here, but there is a huge amount of respect for you and the way that you lead your team. Can you share with us a nugget or two of how you engender that in your team? Because I know one of the hardest things of running a really successful last planner system is the confidence of the person at the head of the room. So it's great when you're there. All the subcontractors are going to behave and they're going to want to be involved. But when you step away, how do you make sure that your direct supports have that same mana?
I think, I suppose for me, the journey's never been, it's not easy, it's, I think changing your own behaviors. I'm trying to learn continually, on how my behaviors affect others. I think, I spoke to our team the other day, when we're on the jobs, we cast quite a big shadow. So, if we're not bringing our best self to the room, to the table, to the meeting, then it has an effect on everybody in there. So you've got to get ready for it. So, we talk to the team about that, the self-awareness side of things. I think clear and respectful communication, so that open and honest sort of dialogue. We talk a lot about that. I think probably sometimes I'm bang on about it quite a bit, but if we've got to promote that sort of sense of safety to those that are in the room, that they're not going to get abused or screamed at in front of everybody if something hasn't quite gone to plan. So it's, and that's the idea of it. So it's collaborative. Again, we all own it, right? So if somebody's missed a goal, a milestone, we've probably all got a part to play in that. It won't just be any one particular person. The planning, did we consider it? Did we see it earlier on? So, I suppose it's, asking, what do they need? I think that can be a hard one sometimes, if they're, what support they need, what assistance they might need to get their job done. I think on the projects, we've got a great culture there. The teams and the subcontractors alike, they really get on. there's sort of it's definitely a team environment. So I think that's something that I also enjoy. It's we spend quite a bit of time in work, don't we? So we want to make sure that it's a place that we can enjoy and we can thrive in.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Paul. And yeah, I think that service is what you're talking about, isn't it? That allowing yourself to be humble enough to support the trades rather than feel like you're a master over them. What are their needs? So, hey, look, we've got a few minutes left. I'm just going to open to the audience now to see if you've got any questions. And I know Sue has one or two. So if you want to raise your hand, I am still getting used to Teams and in particular webinars, so I'm just looking about how to allow everyone to talk. But if you raise your hand, I can activate your
Maybe I can start.
phone.
Yeah,
if you wouldn't mind, Sue, that would be awesome.
I'm fortunate enough to have been on a number of your sites and seen how you've done things, Paul. But I just wanted to know, when you go back to the very beginning, one of my favorite words is adaptability, and I know that you're really good at that. When you are starting a new site, you have new staff, you have new clients, you have new projects. How do you work out because I mean, every last planner is the same, but every last planner is different. So how do you go on and, engage with the staff, engage with the clients, and work out the best way to tackle the last planner, like I said, on all the different sites in different ways? How do you do that?
I suppose fundamentally, it's almost like setting that charter, isn't it? For want of a better word, if we can have an early catch up with the client, we've done team building with consultants, clients, on one of the projects recently. We used a trainer there he's an ex-Special Air Service SAS chap that sort of put the team through some quite rigorous exercise and carrying of loads, and the idea there was to see how people operate under pressure as a team. And we had the client, we had consultants, we had our team involved in that. So it was a great it's a way of breaking down those boundaries and then building that team culture. I suppose ultimately the end goal, the success for all, is the completion, that whether it be, a defect-free handover on this particular date. So that's a goal that we're all committed to. And then how do we get there? So what are the challenges? What have we seen happen over the various projects we may have worked on or over the years? A lot of it will be very similar. And then, the last planner system, I think, can offer some assistance in that. We had some buy-in very early on the job at the Mason Clinic, so the client bought into it. They still attend the daily stand-ups, every morning, goes through the constraints tracker. What part of that does he own, or do the consultants own, and what can he do to assist? So, that is just, it's phenomenal that, he doesn't wait for the weekly meeting. He's actually there on a daily basis. So the consultants are based on site, and they'll pop into the room and they check the boards, they check the constraint trackers. So they're, there's definitely that, it's a team environment. I think trying to promote that is important. Hope that answered it, Sue.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks,
that was
Sue.
great. Thanks.
Cheers. So I've enabled everyone's microphone, so I'm just going to call a couple of people out. Paul Stone, I know you've got heaps of experience yourself, and you guys know each other. Do you have any questions you'd like to ask on behalf of yourself and your Downer team?
Yeah, morning, Amanda. And morning, Paul.
Hi.
Morning, Paul.
Bright and early, mate.
Yeah,
I got a quick question around the chair. You were talking about chairing the meetings yourself, and I've done that myself. Both of us have got a few years of experience under our belt. On the other last planners where you're not involved, I guess there's a number of those around the projects that you've got. Who do you generally use to chair the meeting? What sort of level of role?
So we've developed a competency for the last planner, just and part of that competency also involves chairing the meetings. So they'll do the report and they'll chair the meeting. So we've had it led by the package managers. So they could be senior site managers, could be one of the area leads, site engineers. I think, it's just the environment that, again, it's a safe environment for them all. So all they're doing is, running the meeting, the reasons for the zeros, and then they issue a weekly report to myself. So I get a weekly last planner report from all of the projects, so I can track it. If I can't attend the meetings, and I do sometimes, if I can get across, I'll sit in. Our planner also sits in on the meetings, but yeah, it would depend on the the team, but I think they do share the load a little bit there. So who's going to do the minutes for the meeting? Who's going to update the report? Who's going to chair it? They share that load around, but they're all in it together. So it's it's not any one person on their own.
Yeah, I find if there's a bit of seniority in that role, definitely helps.
Yeah,
helps the people to be more engaged.
Yeah, so they may be in the room, but potentially not chairing that particular, to allow somebody else the chance to grow and to actually, to front it. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's the ability to probe and ask a few questions. I mean, you can usually tell when somebody's answering a question whether you're 100% confident in what they're saying.
Yeah.
You can ask them if they got the materials organised, have they got all the materials organised they need, that sort of stuff. And you'll know yourself. Sometimes the answer comes back, well, not quite. We've got half of it.
Yeah, so we have similar conversations with the team. Sometimes it's you can walk in there and ask a few questions and pull quite a few constraints out of the floor very quickly. So again, there's, I suppose, a lot of it would come down to experience also. But the weekly sessions the weekly planning sessions we've got, there's a few senior site managers in there and project managers at that level, sort of running a package of works that identifying, any of those roadblocks and issues, things that can bring us to a grinding halt. So, and then we also do one. So I'll have a meeting on the project with the team and we'll dig into stuff at a little bit higher level. But again, just probing, just trying to help and unlock some of those roadblocks,
Right. Well, look, Paul,
Yeah,
thank
Paul.
you very much. That was fantastic and great question there, Paul. So I'm just going to move to wrap up in the last minute that we have. So absolutely amazing, Paul. You've got so much experience. Thank you. And the key takeaways I gathered from that were, first of all, it's all about collaboration. Get your trades involved. Start your last planner early, even before all the trades are on board, so get the other trades can help you to onboard other people. Really work to engender that no blame culture, and at the end of the day it's all about digging out those constraints together and working out how you can work on them. So thank you very much. That was an amazing session. Everyone will have access to the recording of it, and if anyone would like to feature as a guest speaker in future, please contact myself or Sue, and we wish you every endeavour, Paul, on your last planner. You really sounds like you've nailed it. Thank you. Lots of best wishes. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. See ya.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, Will's obviously away from his desk. Look, there's always one.
Yeah, that's gone off to the loo or something.
He's one of the site engineers at Ormiston.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh, look, thank you. That's great. There's some nuggets in there that we didn't have time to dig out, which was your competency that you've developed for chairing the meeting and things like that. So, yeah. Sorry, you were going to say something.
No, I flicked through the touch plan. I think the big one, I mean, we touched on it there, but the admin side of things, you know, and the bigger the jobs get and the more cumbersome those spreadsheets can start to look. I mean, from a civil aspect to a building aspect, you know, it's huge. The difference is it's monumental, isn't it? So it's, you know, staying on top of that. And I'm very interested in, I think, the digital aspect of it and what can we do there, like the touch plan. So I flicked it on to the PM and site engineer out at the Papakura courthouse. Now that's a job that's it's on the site of the old RSA in Papakura. So they're about to demolish the old building and then we'll start the new. It's around, you know, we'll be breaking ground June, July time, but I think it's a great one to get them on the journey. Will has used last
Paul,
planner.
I'm just conscious that I don't know how much control I've got over the recording of this, so I might just stop the meeting because you don't want all your business being in on the recording. So I'll end the event and then we can have a telephone conversation if you like on that. Do you want to do that straight off?
You better go and delete that back end.
Yeah. Okay, I'll talk to you in a minute.
All right. See ya.